Okay, morning folks. Welcome to the Global Power Platform Bootcamp UK edition. Firstly, apologies for running this on a working day. I know everybody also has work to go to, and hopefully you've maybe got us on in the background as well as getting some work done. The Global Power Platform Bootcamp is the February 18th and 19th, and unfortunately, I happen to be moving house this weekend. So Friday it is. So all of these sessions will be available on YouTube, but just look at who's managed to show up despite the fact that we're recording this on a Friday. Look at the faces that we've got here and the presenters. So thank you so much to everybody for taking part and really jumping in and helping the community out to put on the only UK Global Power Platform Bootcamp event. So without further ado, let's just move on and I'll introduce you to me. So I'm your host today. So in case we haven't met, that's a crying shame and we should get on and do that. So reach out to me on all of these social things. So I'm Sharon Sumner. So I'm one of the leads of the Cambridge Power Platform user group, and one of our first speakers is also one of the new leads of the Cambridge Power Platform group as well. I'll introduce you to him in a moment. So I'll be around all day. So in the background of all of these sessions, I'll be here, I'll answer questions, I'll interrupt the speakers because that's what I do. So that we make sure that everybody is getting their voice heard through the chat, and make sure that the presenters are getting some good feedback as and when it happens if they're busy presenting and not necessarily looking at the screen. So I'll be your moderator. If we can keep the questions in chat, that really helps. And throughout the day, as I say, please let's have some chat going on that chat channel, and keep the thing light and airy and moving along. So obviously today what we're going to do is we're going to be recording all of the speakers so that we can put that live on YouTube. There will be events going on around the world, so expect to see lots of YouTube videos coming out over the coming few days, and we'll be prepping those up next week or in the next week or two. We've got quite a lot of speakers to get through. Housekeeping, please be respectful in your comments or in your questions. If we permit you to come off mic, please be respectful to the speakers that have given up their time for the day. And that's all I'm going to say on that, because I think it's a given. We're a community and we work together. These guys that have spent their time to come and pass on their knowledge and help show you some cool stuff that they've done in these apps. So it's really important that we respect the speakers and also the guests. So thank you everybody for coming along. Here's our agenda for the day. So what are we looking at? First up, the amazing Sancho Harker, who we can all see up there, hopefully, at the top of the screen. He's ready to go first. Sancho is Microsoft MVP, as are most of the speakers today, and will be sharing with us some of the stuff he's been doing on the amazing theming tools in Power Apps. Really worth seeing this session. I think this is probably the first session since version 3, so we're super lucky to have Sancho kicking off the day. We've got a session with Shane Young. This is a pre-recorded slot that he's done for us that we'll play for you at 10:30. We're going to move on to Serge and Isabel. Governance, really important topic. Sorry, let's skip forward. We've got Tomasz, we've got Nick coming along from Microsoft to share with us some Power Apps portals session. We've then got Daniel, Marcin, Elizabeth. I mean, the names just go on. We've got loads and loads of people throughout the day. So it's going to be a really packed day. As you can see, we've got very few breaks, but again, don't worry. If there's a session that you want to see, we'll have that recorded and we'll notify you once we've put all those up on YouTube. So keep a lookout on the CAMS PPUG channel on my YouTube. So thank you. All of the sessions will be on YouTube. So let's get started.
All right, I think, well, it's top of the hour on my watch. So, Sharon,
you just beat me to it. Well done. I was just coming off mute. It's good to
I was just impatiently waiting.
Okay. So the session that we're going to look at with Tomasz today. So welcome everybody back to the Power Platform Bootcamp, which is a full day of sessions from world-class speakers, and our next one being Tomasz, who is here and ready to rock and roll, which is always nice. So we're going to talk about Power Automate, we're going to talk about advanced approval scenarios, and hopefully there'll be lots of questions which we can pop in the chat, or if we get time at the end and we don't overrun, then we can also take you off mute so that you can ask your question directly, especially if it is advanced and complex and all of those things. So do join us in social channels on Twitter and LinkedIn. Let us know what you're thinking of the event with the hashtags on the screen. That's GPPB 2022. And of course, the CAMS PPUG, which is the Cambridge Power Platform User Group. So I'm just going to hand straight over to you, Thomas, because I'm pretty sure you can do your own introduction.
All right, can I already start sharing my screen?
You can, go for it.
That will be even better. I mean, the photo you have is, I like it more. But anyway, just one last thing. I need to move the Teams so I can see the chat. Oh, come on, it's gone. Sorry. It's never that easy.
Nope.
All right, so welcome everyone. Good afternoon, actually. I hope that you have that you had already lunch and that you're ready to listen, and that all the sessions that you already watched were very engaging and interesting, and you learned a lot. So my name is Tomasz Poszytek. I'm from Warsaw, Poland. I'm a Business Applications MVP, as possibly most of the speakers today, or like most of us as well, all of us, a Power Platform enthusiast. I do have years of experience with well, all the Microsoft technologies. However, ever since I started working at SharePoint and with Microsoft, I somehow were focusing on workflows, business processes, and well, automation. And well, that led me to Power Automate and the whole Power Platform world. But I'm still more focusing on Power Automate and Power Automate Desktop recently. Nevertheless, yeah, so that's it. If you like, then I highly encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube, where I'm recording a lot of videos around these quite in-depth technical sessions or videos around things I'm working on or I'm discovering. So if you're interested, simply go and then subscribe, or you can go as well to aka.ms/Poszytek to connect with me through Twitter or LinkedIn or whatever. Right, that being said, no, that's the wrong screen. The session today I'm going to present you is going to be approvals in Power Automate, but not about approvals that you know and you can use like directly straight from the user interface, because that session is a kind of a result of my couple of months long investigation of how we can actually work with approvals directly on Dataverse and on Dataverse data. How it is possible to create workflows tasks actually straight from Dataverse, how they can be approved, how the workflows which are waiting for these tasks to be completed can be resumed. And once I came across Daniel Laskewitz's Swagger file from on GitHub, on his GitHub, where he put an endpoints to call Flow API. However, those endpoints were not allowing to, let's say, update any tasks or resume or complete any tasks, but only those which were actually created or assigned to a user who was calling the API. So there was like no service account or no application permissions available, just delegated. Furthermore, it didn't, I mean, even though it was, for example, allowing me to complete a workflow, complete a task, a task process, it still didn't resume the workflow which was pending for an approval process to be completed. And so what I found out is what I'm going to share with you today. So I will be sharing with you some advanced scenarios around Power Automate tasks. So how you can go beyond what user interface and what you can actually achieve using the actions within Cloud Flows by using Dataverse. All right. So first thing, what I want to tell you is how the approvals architecture works or looks like in Dataverse. And so it actually consists of 8 tables. I'm showing, sorry, 7 tables. I'm showing you here only, let's say, 4 tables from approvals plus the users. The other 3 tables are not taking like an active part in approvals. They're just storing information about specific tasks in their models. So I will just tell about that in a moment. However, these four tables, so approval, flow approval, approval request, and approval response are the four main tables which are taking part in every scenario around tasks. So first, in approval, Power Automate, but as well Microsoft Teams, when you're creating a task in there, is storing information about so-called header of approval. So here you can find the title, description, who created the approval, when it was created, if it allows reassignment, if it allows if it should send notifications, and once a task is completed, once the approval process is completed, here is as well information about the outcome. Then approval request is the table where process creates a single entry per each task generated during the approval process. So if you assign a task to 3 employees, then you will have 3 approval request records created in this table that keep information like to whom it is assigned, where it was assigned, and that is basically it. Oh, and in case it was reassigned, then it is also containing a lookup to the record from which it was reassigned. And then in approval responses, we can find information about every single task that has been completed. So whenever a user completes a task, then in approval responses, the process, the mechanism is going to create a new record containing information about when it was created, obviously, what was the outcome, who completed the task, and what were the comments, if any comments were provided. And then this last very important table, it is containing information about every flow instance that is actually containing an start and approval or start and wait for approval actions. So whenever you create a workflow which has any of these actions and an instance is running, then this instance will have as well information written to this table. Plus, if you use an action in the approval process that is waiting for the process to be completed, then as well in this table you will find a so-called flow notification URI that once you call is going to resume a workflow. And that's the most important thing, because even though that you really follow all those steps that are required in every or in particular scenario around approvals, like completion, cancellation, rejection, and whatever, then if you want to call this flow notification URI, then the workflow waiting for approval process to be completed is not going to be resumed anyhow. Right. Another important thing is that approvals are environment related. So they're only available, the data is only available in that environment where the approval was created. And therefore, if you have many environments where approval tasks are created, then there is like no single place where you can see all your tasks being assigned to you. You need to switch between environments. No matter if you're doing this through Power Automate portal or if you're doing that through Microsoft Teams, always you need to switch to that specific environment where a task is assigned to you, and then you will have a list of all the tasks that are assigned to you. And so, as you possibly know, there are like only 2 ways you can assign the task to a user, the UI ways, so to Power Automate workflows or through Microsoft Teams, and there you have an option to assign that through a chat or using the approvals application. And then when we assign a task through Power Automate, there are like only 3 actions that we can use. And like the very basic one is to start and wait for an approval. That action is simply assigning a task, and that's it, and just waiting. So in that scenario, if you choose that action, you can't actually do a lot. And then another action is to create an approval, and it usually is combined with wait for an approval. So create an approval simply generates task and returns all information about that task, that approval process. And then wait for an approval simply waits for this approval process to be completed. And between these 2 actions, you are able to create any business logic that you want to be executed before process is going to wait. For example, to record this information about newly created approval process in some other Dataverse table, and then to create a workflow working on that other table that, for example, is checking if a specific number of responses is already created. And so if it's like 50-60%, then to complete approval instead of waiting for all responses to be collected. And last thing, promise, it is last thing that from these basics, is the types of approvals. Why am I speaking about that? It's obvious, I know, but the reason why I'm talking about that is that if we choose the option to approve reject where everyone must approve, then what you possibly know, but maybe you don't, is that the workflow will either wait for all approvals or wait for first rejection. So in that case, whenever someone rejects their task, this approval process is going to be ended, no matter how many other assignees are still how many other assignees haven't still responded, or how many approvals were placed before the rejection. And then when speaking about the custom responses where the workflow is waiting for all responses, then in this scenario, actually, it is really waiting for all responses. So for example, if you assign a task to 10 assignees, then the workflow is going to, then the process is going to wait as long as all these 10 assignees responds. Plus, in case of approve reject, the outcome of approval is always either approve or reject. Meanwhile, in custom responses, if you have this option to wait for all responses, then the outcome is going to be like a concatenated string built from every single response. So, for example, if you have yes, no as a custom responses, or yes, no, maybe, whatever, then as the outcome from, for example, five tasks, you will have yes, no, yes, maybe, no, with a semicolon as a delimiter. And so, yeah, so that's the thing. Daniel already asked a question about these 30 days. Yes, it's a limitation of the infrastructure, or the flow infrastructure, but not of the Dataverse itself. So actually, that's true that Power Automate is not going to wait longer than 30 days for the approval to be completed. However, if you follow any of the existing patterns that you can find on the internet, how to build a long-running flows, then indeed you can have approvals running for years even, and that's fine. Only if, of course, you don't have any retention policies applied to approval tables that is removing data from those tables. But if you don't have, then data is going to be there for years, and so approvals can last for years. All right. There is also an option to extend your tasks to Microsoft Teams. So if you choose to create an approval, then one of the dynamic outcomes from that approval, from that action, is an adaptive card code, which you can simply post using the post adaptive card in a chat or channel action. Don't use the one that is waiting, because that one won't work. You have to use this one, which is not waiting. And then after posting the card, you'll need to use that action to wait for an approval, so that this action actually waits for the approval to be completed. And also, as mentioned, you can create tasks from Microsoft Teams. So you can either make it from this small application, this small icon here in the authoring area. So you can hit here and then create new approval, or you can go to approvals application. So you can just pin it to the app bar, and then you can hit the new approval request. And yep, that's, I think, it about these basics. So now just jump to the advanced scenarios, because I don't want to waste any more time on PowerPoint, because the demos are really cool. So that is just confirmation to what Daniel asked. So yeah, just 30 days, and after that, workflow simply the action is cancelled, and the workflow ends up with a failure. So you'll find that workflow in the runs history as failed. All right. So let's go through briefly to the scenarios that I mentioned. So whenever a task is created, there are like two actions happening. So first, in table approvals, a workflow is creating a new record with this particular, let's say, choice fields set to stage basic, status active, status is impending. And as well, per each task assigned during that approval process, there is a new record created in the approval request tables. There are much more information, of course, being written. However, these statuses, stages, status reasons have to be set to those because based on these values, actually, users are then able to see tasks assigned to them if they navigate to action items in Power Automate or to their approvals in Microsoft Teams. So, for example, if a header record, so the record in approvals, status is inactive, then any task related to this approval is not going to be visible as active, obviously. Now, when speaking about completion, then the only thing that actually happens in that scenario is happening in approval. So then the record in approvals is being updated with the outcome, and as said, status is going to be changed to inactive. And of course, if there were any tasks completed during this approval process, then for each completed task, a new entry in approval responses is going to be added. Then, in the case of reassignment, the only change is happening in approval request. So the original task is being set as inactive, and a new entry is created with the lookup to that original entry, so with information from which task it was reassigned. And lastly, just one more important information. So if you do reassign tasks using UI, then there are like principles UI is following, which we don't have to follow when we are working with Dataverse. However, you can just keep them in mind when you're building your own solutions so that you just don't do something that shouldn't be possible or that isn't possible working with UI. So first, you can't reassign tasks that are not assigned to specific users. So I couldn't reassign John's task. You can't reassign tasks to yourself, obviously, and you can't reassign a task to the person who assigned a task to you. Again, through Dataverse, it is possible, and thanks to the fact it is possible, we can create such a solution like substitutions, for example, right? So we can create a table that where we enter substitution information, like for whom the substitution is being created and in which time span. And then we have a workflow which goes through that table every day, for example, and then simply reassigns all tasks assigned to the user who is going to be, for example, on holidays, to the person indicated as a substitute. And then after the holidays, it's going to reassign these tasks back from the substitute to the original assignee. Well, that wouldn't be possible if we were only using the UI and the UI interface, the user interface. Sorry. Although through Dataverse everything's possible, but just keep that in mind. And lastly, when a task is cancelled, the only information updated is in the approvals table, and here all these flags are being updated. So stage, status, and status reason are being updated accordingly, and the result, so the outcome of the whole approval, is just cancelled. So it doesn't let's say gather all other responses. So if a task is cancelled, it just says it's cancelled, and that's it. All right, sure. So let's go to demos for the most interesting part. I have a lot of issues with my machine recently, so I just provisioned quickly this virtual desktop, and it's working like a charm. I'm really happy. So I hope there will be no issues today with the demos. So anyway, first let's start from the scenario where we have a workflow that has assigned a task to, for example, well, to some people, and we want this workflow to be completed, even though it hasn't really reached this number of approvals it needs. So first, that's just a simple workflow. You can see that first I'm using this action to create an approval, then there is action to compose, and then the action is, the compose is showing me the approval ID. And lastly, there is an action to wait for approval. So here where the action, well, here is the workflow going to actually stop. So now I'm going to test it to assign tasks to myself and to other employees. And have I started it? No, haven't. So just need to open one more one more thing that I haven't yet, and I have it on my machine because I'll be using that for another demo, and hopefully this Excel file is going to work. All right, that is being opened. So let's go back to the virtual machine. So anyways, the workflow is running, and so I have here a set of cloud flows which I'm using to handle different scenarios. And one of them is to complete an approval. So this workflow is only going to really complete the approval without really doing anything else. It can complete any approval just by actually calling this REST, this flow notification URI. So basically what this flow is doing, first, it receives approval ID as the input parameter. And this is done only this way because I just didn't have any ready-to-use scenario where I can simply call this Power Automate from other flows. But the goal is that once you create such a workflow like this one, you can seal in this additional logic for approval between the create and wait for approval. So here, once you obtain this approval ID, you can do a lot of magic automatically, or as I'm doing this myself, you can create like a manually triggered flows where you need to provide this approval ID as an input parameter and then create the rest of the logic. But basically, this is just for this demo purposes. So the next thing this workflow is doing is gathering information about all assigned tasks and the approval record, this approval header information itself. So right now, workflow knows all assigned tasks and knows all about the approval process itself. And then it is getting information about all tasks which were already completed during this approval process. So what I'm going to do right now is I'll open the same window in private mode, and that is enough. And I'll just sign into an account of John Researchers, who was also assigned this this task in this demo. Okay. Oh, it knows everything because it is synced with my account. It's magic, really. I'm impressed how everything works in the cloud and is being synced and works across many different devices. Nope, nope, and action items. Okay, so there is this task assigned moments ago. John is going to approve his task. So if John would select reject, then obviously this approval process would be completed ad hoc and no demo could be done. However, John is going to confirm approval and going back to this whole solution. So right now, this workflow is going to gather as well John's response. And then what it's doing for each response in that approval process that has been gathered or placed, it's building a request body that is going to be sent in the end to these flow notification URI. Now, what is this request body? Well, if you navigate to a workflow that you have built that is using as well the assigned or start approval process or assign task and wait for approval, and you check how does the completed approval process looks like. So what information is being returned from this action, then you can see these raw outputs. So the body that is being received by the action. And this body is actually having a schema that the action is waiting for so that it is able to really transform these contents into those dynamic outcomes. And if you send to the flow notification URI JSON having the same schema, so just like from this bracket to that bracket, following the same values and so on, then it will be as well displayed the same way as if it was approved straight from user interface. However, what is really interesting about the flow notification URI is the fact that you can actually send there any JSON, any valid JSON. So if you have your own automation process and you would like to send something else apart from the default request content, then you can construct your own JSON, send it, and then simply parse it once the approval process is completed, and just handle these outcomes the way your business logic requires that. So keep in mind that you're able to really send to Flow Notification URI any JSON, and that any JSON is going to be available one-to-one. The way you post it, it will be just available in the flow. Anyways, so what it's doing here is getting information about the users who has completed their tasks, and then it's composing first the array of responses, and then so like this responses list, and then secondly is composing an array of responses summary. So as you can see here, there are like two arrays. Sorry, not here, but here there is like one array of responses. And well, the second is not an array, but it's just a concatenated string, although I need to make it first an array in Flow and then to concatenate it. However, it contains all single, like every single response that is collected during the process, concatenated using these rn whatever, like new line. So this is how it's being used. And once this request body is built, then Flow is looking up to Flow approvals record to get the record related to this approval ID. And so I assume, or there is an assumption, that this Flow approval record is going to contain a Flow notification URI. However, you have to be aware it's not that simple, because if you use the action the actions as I had, so first create and then wait for approval, then you will actually find two entries in the Flow approval table. And the first entry that has an approval ID equal the one generated for the approval process is actually created for this action. And it has Flow notification URI empty. Then the second record is generated for this action. However, it has quite different approval ID. That is like nothing you can find in approval table. You just have like a random GUI generated as a flow as an approval ID. And so you then need to find the other record for this action that is waiting. If you decide to use start or create and wait for an approval, then it will be just one record with a Flow notification URI. In my case, these are two records and I need to find the second one. So if the Flow notification URI is empty, returned by this action, what I'm doing is calling that table again, but this time I'm using the Flow sequence ID, or Flow sequence ID, which is the same for all records generated for that instance. And only with that Flow sequence ID and the other OData filter, so that this Flow notification URI is not empty, or that it starts with HTTPS, I'm actually able to find that URL. All right, then update the approval and send request to Flow notification URI. Wow, that was long, but the important thing around or behind this long explanation or long description how this kind of solution can be built was because every other scenario I'm going to show you actually follows nearly the same steps. So you need to first gather information about the approval, then you need to combine or build this request body that is going to be sent in the end to Flow notification URI. Then you have to find the Flow notification URL. Then you need to update data in proper tables. And finally, you need to send this request to Flow notification URI so that the workflow can be resumed. Of course, if this is the scenario where you want to resume the flow. All right, so I'll now call this workflow. Need to copy the GUID. And there should be a request form, present. Let's say, again, so I'm speaking again, I can send anything I want, right? So I can say the outcome, it will be used as the outcome too. So this is the flexibility of working with Dataverse, that you don't really have to stick to what would be sent using the UI, but you can just be creative and complete your very custom and demanding business scenarios. Nevertheless, after all this workflow has been completed, this is what has been sent to the flow notification URI. So what you can see, the flow notification URI is just like any other URL that you would call when creating a Cloudflow that is triggered through HTTP requests. So these are very similar. And then the flow and the request body is built from all this information that the action actually awaits, but the outcome is hooray. So once I navigate back to this flow, you can see that it has now completed, and this is the response. So yep, the outcome is hooray. Here in responses, I see as well information about the action that, or the task that John researcher has completed. There is as well his information in responses summary. So yep, all this information. He didn't put any comment, and therefore there is no comments provided. Oh no, he did, but the comment, comment is here. So the comment was also recorded. And this way, the approval has been completed, even though it was still waiting for 2 more approvals. Awesome, right? All right. Now, let's go back, and what we can do is to say, let's say, do the same scenario, but this time, what I would do instead of completing the task would be to cancel it. So then again, for this cancel, which is being triggered again for this scenario manually, but it just, I mean, it again follows the same steps as you've seen before. However, what it does in the end is following this cancellation scenario. So it doesn't update the approval record with information about the outcome, I mean, the approve reject. It doesn't set the record to the status reason complete or completed, but it updates the record with the status reason cancelled, with the result cancelled. And so this way you are able to simply, again, cancel any workflow process, any approval process which is still waiting for an approval. For example, in scenarios that, well, you need to wait for more responses and you know that you won't get them before the timeout, but you have implemented a solution that that is working, for example, on the cancellation outcome. So you can have a long-running workflow, which anytime the outcome is canceled, is simply recreating the whole approval process and then is waiting for the approval next 30 days, for example. So here again, if I simply copy that GUI apps and send it to that workflow, I hope it will work a bit faster than the previous one, but it's not. Come on, don't disappoint me. So it seems that even though it's working directly on virtual machine, it's not that fast, speaking about the internet connection. I'll put myself as the person who canceled. Right, and here again, once this workflow is over, is done, then again, this is going to be resumed, right? So here again, the outcome is now canceled. All the information about the cancellation has been sent. One important information that might bother you or might be interesting is that why am I getting this information about the users? Because I'm just providing that user using their email, and there is as well available users Azure ID, right? Somewhere here there should be, or maybe not. Sorry, here. So that there is users Azure ID somewhere here. I know I have it, like maybe that was, yeah, here that is. So why don't you use it to simply get information about the user who has completed or the user who has approved the task? Well, that's because all the information Dataverse around users is being stored with a lookup or with a reference to the table users, which and only which has any connection with Azure AD. So if I want to map my email to a specific user GUID within Dataverse, I need to query that table using my email address. Right. So that having said, let's jump over to another scenario where I would like to reassign a task to myself, so that to show you that such scenario can be used, for example, for the substitutions. So then let's assume I have a workflow which is assigning tasks to only 2 users. And oh, that doesn't matter if I save it with, trigger it with the recent trigger or with a new trigger. So right now, when I navigate to my approvals, I will not have that task, obviously, because I am not one of the assignees. However, if I go to John Researcher's approvals, then John has his task assigned. Now, the challenge in this scenario is that I don't only need the approval ID, so I don't only need this information to reassign a task, but I need as well information about the task that has been generated. So the approval request ID. Let me go to reassign task workflow. So what this Cloudflow requires to be triggered is a set not only the approval ID, but as well this approval request ID. And well, obviously you could find it again by querying the approval ID and an email of the user or the GUID of the user who was assigned the task. And then this way you would be able to extract or find out the approval request ID. However, I made it a little bit more complex and I need to make it manually. So the goal is that right now you need to navigate, in my case, I need to navigate to approval request table. And in that table to data and then to all columns, and simply to find a row created for this GUID. There is no row. So maybe I need to load more information and it will be on the second page. And this time, yep, there are 2. So there is 1 row, but this one is assigned to Stefan. So I need to find another one that is assigned to John. No, it's not that one. Maybe it's on another page. Oh, wow, there is even more side pages. Oh, okay. And there is the record that hopefully is assigned to John. Yep, it's the one that is assigned to John. So what I have to do now is to copy its GUID and paste it to this workflow. And so what this flow is doing is, as I showed you in the presentation, is creating this new approval record with a lookup to this original flow, this original record, task record that has been assigned in this case to John. And once this new task is created, then the existing one, so the one that was assigned to John, is marked as reassigned and as inactive. Right? So those are the steps which the workflow is doing. And in this scenario, you don't need to resume the Cloudflow, which is waiting for the approval to be completed, because reassignment is not anyhow getting you closer to the approval process to be completed. Now, once the form is loaded, okay, come on. I'll paste here the approval ID and the approval request ID. And I'll reassign that task again to myself. Okay, and simply run. So now what I as well see when navigating to the action items is that I think it will be too late already. Yeah, it's too late. So before I reassigned, this approval process was sent to John and Stefan. right now it's sent to me and Stefan. So once I go back to received, I should have this task present here. Right, so there is a task. It is reassigned from John, and John, as he refreshes his view, is not going to have this task anymore, right? So the task is gone from his interface, but it's now available in my interface. So like I can approve it instead of him. And this way you could simply build sort of those substitution systems or processes that you can use to take tasks from people who are on holiday leave or on sick leave or just, left the company to others who are available so that they can complete the tasks. And the last scenario I wanted to show you is then, again, I will use this process. No, not this one, sorry. I will use this process that is assigning tasks. Then I will assign it as well to myself. So it is now assigned to like 3 employees, and what I want to do right now is to complete this task after, let's say, 60% of tasks are given. So this is a scenario that is possible using SharePoint Designer, or that it was possible using SharePoint Designer ever since. So SharePoint workflows, you were able to mark to be completed after a specific number of responses is received. However, in Power Automate, that was never possible and possibly will never be using out-of-box approach, but you can do that on your own. So what I have done, I've created this very simple table, which purpose is to hold information about the approval processes with the number of responses, the percentage of responses that has to be collected so that the workflow can move on. So here for this approval process, I will mark that 60% of approvals must be collected. Okay. This is a custom table. I open it using Excel so that I'm able to update information in it. And right now it's waiting. So let me open that workflow. And then there is another flow I have built, which is called complete approval after a specific number of responses is collected. And again, it is following the same approach as every other flow you have seen. The only difference is that it is simply checking if the number of responses that have been collected is equal or higher than the number it is waiting. So in this case, it will be 60% or just 60. And then if yes, it is just following all this logic to gather the responses and then build the request body and send the request body to the notification URI. So now, once I go to my approval items, which are here, and I refresh it, and then I complete it, oh, and obviously this workflow is being triggered every time there is a new record created in approval responses table. So that's the trigger of this workflow. So right now it has been triggered because I just completed a task. It was able to, by comparing the approval request, by the approval ID of that response task, to find a proper approval record. And then for this approval record, it is able to find the quota. So in this case, it's this, well, somewhere here. Yeah, it's the 60%, right? So that's the information. However, because the percentage is now 32%, therefore workflow did nothing. It just went to completion ad hoc. However, if I now go to John Researcher's interface and John completes his task, then what is going to happen here, or maybe even here, is that this workflow is going to be resumed. So the process, the approval process is going to be resumed because number of responses is now 66%. 2 out of 3. And as you see, it has been done. So the response is approved. There is as well information about every single approval. So my approval was the first one, John's was the second one. And so this way you can again build like your own custom logic in parallel to your workflows, which are running the approval processes, to handle such scenarios as completion of the approval based on some specific conditions and so on. All right, I think I'm running out of time. So I still have like more things to show. For example, this custom application which I built to help me manage all tasks and all, well, yeah, actually tasks and approval processes in every workflow running on that specific environment, from which I am as well able to reassign, complete, and approve any tasks, and so on and so on. However, this thing can be found as well with some kind of explanation on my YouTube channel. So if you're interested, just go there and or ask me directly if you have questions. Right, Sharon, I know that there possibly
You've got 4 minutes.
I know that, yeah, it's 15 minutes, so it's like 5 minutes for questions.
Yep, absolutely. And I know Sancho's been busy clearing down the chat for you, but it might be worth just having a scroll through. Is there anybody that would like to ask anything of Tomasz in person? We can take you off mute momentarily.
I'm just trying to find if there's any question that Sancho didn't answer.
Oh, so Daniel's just said, I guess this is using Premium Connector for data.
Well, yes, obviously, working with Dataverse is using Premium connectors, as you can even see here in the table of the flow. So every time you see that diamond is just a Premium. Yes. So sorry, all these scenarios are actually requiring Premium subscription for either per user or per flow, depending on the scenario.
A lovely compliment there from Craig. Busy session with lots of good stuff. We'll watch the recording and soak up the material. Yep, we will be putting all the sessions live. I do appreciate that some of our speakers have got some complex demos, and you know, some of this it might take you a few times to get your head around it. So yeah, the content will go up on my YouTube channel, but under a playlist specifically for the bootcamp, and we will also put Thomas's contact details on there so you can ask him questions directly. Just scrolling back myself to see if there's anything we haven't answered. If anybody has a burning question that you put up there that you feel we haven't asked, could you please pop that in again for us? It's quite a long chat. I'm loving how well engaged the audience is today for a Friday.
Me too. So like there was, I think one of the repeating questions was about reassignments. I showed it, so it's I think one of the most the easiest scenarios. So you just have to create one approval request record, and then look it up to the old approval request record, and then mark the statuses of the old one accordingly. And then simply the workflow that is waiting for that other person's approval is going to still wait, but this time for the new reassigned person. So like in this case, this workflow is still waiting for the approval to be completed, but now it's me and Stefan who should complete. Well, it still requires premium license, because if you'd like to use this, whatever, if you'd like to use custom connector from Daniel Leskowitz, it also requires premium connector. But it helps to really accomplish lots of business logic, business scenarios around these people who are leaving company or are on holiday, and you have workflows which are nearly hitting this 30-day limit, and you have to you need to have them completed. So you need to reassign these tasks. And in that scenario, you can have like a single flow which is running on a daily basis and is reassigning tasks to other people. And then you need to have just one license that you will use for that scenario. So
yeah, I mean, I think there's lots of things that we could go into, because obviously this could branch off into various different scenarios, right? But we will call time on you, Tomasz. Thank you so much for going through that in such detail with us. It is a really it's a really great topic, and it's something that we're all hitting, whether it's with levers or complex scenarios. You know, it needs addressing. So I mean, it's a fantastic solution that you've got going there, and you know, there could always be more time spent on these things. So thank you so much for doing that. And we will put some links in there to your other content, because you've got quite a bit on YouTube and stuff as well that we can point our users to. So we are scheduled for a 10-minute break. So we will do that. But first of all, thank you so much to Tomasz. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you coming.
Thank you very much for having me. And yeah, I really hope that you enjoyed and you are inspired to create more custom scenarios around approvals.
So we will take a 10-minute break. I can see that Nick from Microsoft is already here. I don't know if he's physically here. Are you there, Nick?
I'm physically here, yeah.
Always
here,
good.
Anyway.
I appreciate it's probably very early in the morning for you.
Nah, it's like almost a day's half over for me. I'm up early every day anyway, so no biggie.
That's all good. So Nick will be joining us after a short break. We'll be talking about Power Apps portals, which we don't talk about very often.